Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking a truly fascinating diagnostic look at a word we hear literally every single day, yet one that somehow always seems to fail us. We're digging into a recent essay by language philosopher Bry Willis, and it's called The Disambiguation Cost of Accountability. Honestly, if you've ever felt like the promise of accountability is just a total mirage, Willis actually offers a compelling, structured explanation as to exactly why that is.
Okay, let's dive into this, because it starts with a deeply universal frustration. Whenever there's a massive corporate disaster, a colossal failure of public policy, or even just those heated debates about the future of AI governance, the immediate cry from everyone is always, who is accountable? Right? We demand it, we expect it. And yet, when the dust finally settles, we almost always feel like we've been handed an empty promise. Whether it's a giant institution or a complex algorithm, pinning down true accountability feels like trying to nail jelly to a wall.
Now, critics usually point out three major failures with how we use this concept today. First, there's overextension. It just swells into a meaningless buzzword that basically means good governance, right? It doesn't actually discriminate anything. Second is incommensurality. That's a big word, but it basically just means the massive gap between the irreversible harm people suffer and the tiny amount of redress actually offered. And third is degeneration, which is where accountability collapses into pure ceremonial performance. Think of a slick PR apology totally decoupled from any operational substance. Now, existing critiques correctly identify these three failures, but Willis points out they make a critical mistake. They assume these are just corruptions of an otherwise perfectly coherent concept. And here is the core twist of Willis's argument. He proposes that this isn't just about bad actors, moral decay, or poor institutional design. Those three failures actually share a common enabling condition that happens prior to ethics. It's a fundamental glitch in our language itself. We're all walking around assuming accountability tracks a firm, determinate object, when in reality, it absolutely doesn't.
Part 1, the language of failure. Let's peel back the layers and see how this word actually functions in the wild. And this brilliantly illustrates the foundation of Willis's linguistic diagnosis. He looks at polysemy, which is just when a word has multiple meanings. On the innocent side, think of the word bank. It can mean the edge of a river or a financial institution. This is totally harmless because the contexts are disjointed. If I say I'm going to the bank to deposit a check, the context completely saturates the meaning. The disambiguation is paid once and it's done. But on the other side, we have protected polysemy. This is where multiple overlapping senses of a word are kept deliberately unresolved. In protected polysemy, the ambiguity survives because it is highly useful for an institution's daily standing arrangements. And the crucial point here is that no one actually has to consciously stand watch over this ambiguity. You don't have a shadowy board of directors twirling their mustaches, scheming to confuse everyone. It simply survives through incentive, routine, and pure procedural convenience. Accountability belongs exactly to this category. Its senses aren't distinct like the river and the financial institution. They are graded and overlapping. Think of it like a slider dial. Over on one end, you have ceremonial answerability, like giving an explanation or being exposed in the press. Way over on the other end, you have harsh material consequences, paying for repairs, facing sanctions, or outright expulsion. Because these senses are related by a sort of family resemblance, a speaker or an institution can slide the dial between them by imperceptible degrees, without ever triggering anyone to stop and correct them. Which brings us to a brilliant term Willis uses, the quasi-invariant. Accountability is the ultimate quasi-invariant. It's a highly fluid, contestable term that gets dressed up and presented both rhetorically in press releases and procedurally in law as though it were a solid, single, settled idea. It basically borrows the forceful, unshakable authority of a strict rule while maintaining the slippery flexibility of a vague guideline. Part 2, the disambiguation cost. Let's move into our Phase 2 investigation and ask, why does this constant sliding between meanings happen without the audience stopping the whole process and demanding clarity? Well, Willis points to the operational criterion that makes this all possible: disambiguation cost. This is the massive expense, the sheer effort, the time, and the social friction required to force a resolution when a word is sliding between its multiple senses. With accountability, forcing a clear, locked-in definition in real time is incredibly costly. And the worst part? It almost never settles the issue permanently. Now, it is absolutely crucial to distinguish this from pure power dynamics. An enforcement cost is when you know exactly what's going on, but you just lack the power to compel a CEO or a politician to answer you. Willis is bracketing that off entirely. He is focusing purely on the semantic architecture, the disambiguation cost. This is what happens when the audience doesn't even register that the sense of the word has shifted from a material sanction to a ceremonial explanation. Willis calls this the presumption gap. The slide between meanings goes completely unremarked.
Let's move to a typical crisis timeline and see how this builds. At time 0, a harm occurs. In the immediate aftermath, there's a fierce, broad demand for accountability. But then comes step 3, the delay period. Because the disambiguation cost is so high, an institution can just equivocate. They launch a task force, they promise transparency, they offer a ceremonial explanation. The equivocation runs to completion while the public assumes the broad demand is actually being met. By the time a resolution is finally forced at step 4, the moment has passed. The delay is the mechanism of survival.
Part 3, the illusion of closure. For our final investigation, let's examine what happens when we think we've finally cornered the system and demanded real material consequences. First, we have to recognize a rather tragic reality. Sincere users are trapped in this equilibrium. When activists, regulators, and the general public demand accountability, they sincerely believe the term is determinate. They really aren't trying to be vague. But because of that presumption gap, their sincere participation in the ritual actually reinforces the credibility of the institution's response. The system functions smoothly precisely because the people demanding accountability actually believe the word can deliver it.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how it applies to the hard cases. What about when someone actually goes to jail or a massive fine is paid? Well, Willis argues that even here, the ritual remains fully intact. The institution presents this narrow, local resolution, like a fine, as though it has discharged the massive, broad moral demands that summoned the word in the first place. It cures a narrow legal problem, but presents itself as curing the broad moral wound. So here is the ultimate trap, broken down into 3 steps. If an institution truly wants to lower the disambiguation cost and define exactly what will happen, they can. They stipulate a very narrow sense of the word. For example, accountability means a 5% fine. They enforce it. But in step 3, we see the catch. In purchasing that clear resolvability, they surrender the resonant moral breadth that made the public's demand forceful in the first place. You can have strict determination, or you can have moral resonance. But you literally cannot have both at the same time.
It's important to understand Willis's posture here. He offers exactly 0 prescriptive solutions. He is completely detached from the reform game. He isn't offering a new replacement concept, and he isn't calling for the abolition of accountability mechanisms. He is simply holding up a mirror to the stark reality of our linguistic limits. The ritual persists, not because we keep failing to execute accountability properly, but because the concept was never the kind of term that could deliver what its fullest register demands. This brings us to a powerfully tragic irony, captured perfectly in this quote from the essay. He writes, "Demands for real accountability characteristically reproduce the equivocation they protest, asking the same term to cure the instability it enabled. Every single time we stand up and yell that we want real accountability this time, we are just feeding the very linguistic monster that caused the evasion in the first place." I want to leave you with this provocative question to end our explainer today. We constantly try to fix governance by adding more reporting, more racy charts, and more oversight boards. But if Willis is right, do these multiplying metrics actually deepen accountability? Or do they just increase the number of occasions where this slippery, quasi-invariant term must be used, providing even more cover for equivocation? It's a question that fundamentally changes how you'll look at every corporate apology, government inquiry, and AI governance debate from this moment forward. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this fascinating source material. Keep questioning the words we take for granted.